It's time for the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here. Today on the big program, lots to get to, lots to talk about. The war on Christmas. That's all we heard today on Fox News. The war on Christmas. They burnt down the tree. All day about the tree. The tree. You had Tucker Carlson go into this whole spiel about the tree, and it's iconic, and and it kind of made me go, for the folks who want those 10 rules plastered everywhere, he was borderline breaking number 2, and I know they don't care about number 2 unless it's the gun fetish thing, but that whole idolatry, that false icon, that false god, maybe they should read their rules. And I know we won't let them plaster them all over the place, but maybe they should read them. Just kind of a thought. Now, the Fox crew, all on board. We're not going to let one guy with a lighter ruin our Christmas. According to Steve Ducey, the other guy, Gutfeld, he said, even though the arsonist is already out in the streets, probably working at CNN. We want the bad guys to know you can keep burning down our trees because we're going to keep putting up another one. And please do it again. Is that an invitation? And it made me think, hold on, wait a second. If I were Fox News, if I were looking at this situation, if someone had burnt down, say, CNN's tree, this would be one of those things where I would start asking which one of these people paid to have the tree burnt down. This is a false flag. They did this simply so they could claim that someone hates them. And my favorite, oh my gosh, my favorite, compare it to Pearl Harbor. The burning down of a tree by I think a homeless guy, an artificial tree, that comparable to Pearl Harbor. Yes, the Reverend Jacques de Graff. He compared that with Pearl Harbor during the lighting ceremony today. I'm like, oh my goodness. They got a guy of the cloth to come and compare that. And I was literally stunned. But yeah, they were comparing the burning of a bush to the Pearl Harbor attack. The other guy, the one that killed Meade, he said that, well, it's a hate crime. How come it's not a hate crime against Fox News? I don't know why the guy burnt down the tree. It's stupid. I don't know why you would do such a thing, but it's certainly not the war on Christmas. And I know they need that to keep they need the outrage candy. They need to keep the minions angry and riled, and they need to get them all ginned up for the war on Christmas that nobody is engaging in except them. And I would argue, and this is one of those things that I tweeted out today. My question is, okay, you put the tree back, and the woman, I forget what her name is. I loved this. She said they were going to build back better, which sent me kind of into this bizarre kind of rage. Going, what exactly are you talking about? Can you tell me where you bought the tree? And was this an American-made tree? Did American workers make the tree? Is it made from American parts? Because here's what I know. I know that in 2018, which is the last year I was able to find statistics, there were about 32.8 million Christmas trees sold in the U.S. 23.6 of them were artificial, and about 90% of those were made in China. That was a couple years ago, so we've probably lost a bit more. Now, there may be some companies here in the U.S. who sell the artificial trees, but they don't make them here anymore. We don't make anything. So the war on Christmas, really honestly and truthfully, when you get down to it, because it is a consumer holiday, that whole meaning of Christmas, Fox News just blew out of the water. But Christmas is brought to us by China. The tree, over 90% of those are made in China. The toys, over 80% of toys are made in China. And you go, wait a second. Where's Fox News on that front? And I'm still waiting. I'm waiting for Fox News to tell me where they bought the tree. Now, I can say, Personally, I can say explicitly that my Christmas tree, my artificial flame retardant Christmas tree, kind of thought ahead a little bit because you're going to put hot lights on something. You might want to make sure that it doesn't burn. I don't know. A little different. I can say mine was made in the U.S. We bought ours some 20 years ago. One of the last ones made by this company in Newburgh, New York. We ended up having to go get it. It was a big, beautiful, it was expensive, but it has been an amazing tree all these years. Made in the U.S., made in Newburgh, New York, and I made sure of that. I wonder if Fox News did their due diligence. I wonder if Fox News even cared about that. Or if they had a staffer go say, oh, go get something. So if you really want to talk about a war on Christmas, the war on Christmas is the attack on American workers, the attack on the things that we give each other. That when I was a kid, 90% of the toys were made here in the U.S. You could name where the factories were and the communities that built those things, that provided those things, that provided for their families and yours. And yet we don't hear any of that from Fox News. Nothing. Because it's just the outrage candy. That's all it's about. It's about the outrage. And look, like I said, nobody does outrage candy like conservatives. And speaking of outrage candy, this is one of those caught my attention as well. Joe Biden was speaking at the Democracy Summit. And in his address, I'm just going to play the clip because it's one of those things where you go, maybe you can catch it. Here's Joe Biden.
Well, Governor Wolf, let me tell you, between now and November 6th.
Here
all women and men are created equal, endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, among them life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Democracy doesn't happen by accident. We have to renew it with each generation.
All righty. Notice how he added women and men are created equal, not just men. It matters, right? That's not what the founders wrote. Apparently, the sacred words of our founders weren't inclusive enough for Sleepy Joe, so he corrected them.
Oh, the sacred words of our founders. He added women. Oh, my goodness, because the sacred words of our founders were, well, you wouldn't have had a job. The sacred words of our founders were, you wouldn't have been able to vote. The sacred words of our founders were white landowning males were only to vote. Women didn't get to buy it, didn't have things. And those black people, they were only worth 2/3 of a person, which is why, again, the Fox crew, they're going to tell you their original intentist. They want us to go back to those days. Now, I find it interesting that they had a woman bring the outrage candy, because if a man would have said that, it would have been misogynistic. And you got to think that even Fox News would have at least gone that far. But they did find a woman to do it, and good for them. But here's the thing. Here's the thing that gets me. This is where you get the outrage candy. You get people, just to get all fired up and angry. You know what Fox News didn't talk about today? The number one story in my world. The fact that by a vote of 19-8, a handful of workers in Buffalo, New York at a Starbucks were the very first workers in that company's history to say, yes, we want to have union representation. Yes, we want to fight for better wages, hours, conditions. Yes, we want to have a voice on the job. Yes, we want to be treated with dignity and respect. We want to be truly partners. Not just on a billboard and not just during a swanky captive audience meeting somewhere on a Saturday night, but true partners engaged in making our lives better. And that, interestingly enough, did not make it into the Fox world. I scanned their site. I searched their site. Nothing. Because all Fox News is about is keeping people angry, keeping them directed at what tears us apart. And that's a problem here, because here's the interesting thing. If they get their way and Republicans win in 2022, which I kind of expect, what are they going to bring? They have no policy ideas. They have no direction. There's nothing that this party really stands for other than chaos. Really? We're going to have Marjorie Taylor Greene, Lauren Boebert, and Matt Gaetz leading a policy push to move a country forward? Seriously? This is what the Fox world wants for our country. And for her, the woman earlier, to say, we're going to build back better because the tree burned is ridiculous. You want to know how we build back better? We invest in our people. We invest in this country. We invest in each other. Instead of this divisive stuff. No, this is a tragedy. I think it's wrong. I don't know why this guy did it. I don't even know 100% sure that he actually did it, because I'm going, how do you burn a flame retardant tree? Unless it was a Chinese tree, well, maybe it didn't have the flame retardant stuff on it. And then again, we've got another problem, because here's the interesting thing as well. The Fox folks, well, they want deregulation. They want to make sure that those trees don't meet certain specifications. So I'm questioning a whole bunch of other things that Fox won't go anywhere near. Like, why did the tree burn? It's not supposed to. It's one of the things that you buy an artificial tree for, because you're pretty certain that those hot lights you're going to put on them might not catch on fire and you may not die in your sleep. That's kind of one of those things that we want to make sure of. So why did the tree burn? You know, if I were Alex Jones or any of the other conspiracy Lulus, you know, this would be some false flag. This is the biggest story ever. Biggest conspiracy. Buy my beet juice. I mean, that's how crazy we've gotten. Instead of saying, no, look, this is bad. It's terrible that this happened. Somebody should be held accountable. And this person's been arrested and charged with a whole bunch of stuff, and he will be. But to then spend a whole day of dividing the country. There's a war on Christmas, and they're coming for us. Instead of talking about the good stories. Fact of the matter is, proud of those people in Buffalo, New York. The things that they were able to stand up against, the forces that they were able to stand up against, the intimidation, the harassment, the constantly being berated. It's pretty impressive stuff in my view. And you would think it would warrant, hey, one little story that, hey, you know, these workers organized. Considering, you know, a lot of my union buddies watch Fox. This would at least give them a talking point that, well, you know, Fox News isn't absolutely 100%, you know, anti-union, maybe just 99.95. I'm not surprised, to be honest, that this is what we've seen, because this is what Fox News does. This is what the right-wing spin machine does. I can't believe any of this is actually news, but it plays off as news because it was on Fox News. We should demand better. We should demand better from those people. If you're a Fox viewer, you should be demanding something other than just outrage candy. Because the only thing that outrage candy gets us is more division. A working class more divided, poorer, more desperate, and angrier. And easy to be pitted against each other. And I throw out the Jay Gould quote. I can easily pay half the working class to murder the other half. This is another one of those issues. Designed specifically to tear us apart. Well, you're not Christian. Look, I condemn the burning of the tree. I condemn the destruction of anyone's religious toys, their religious beads, their religious trees. I don't, however, see this as the war on Christmas. See, this is one guy did something stupid. And to say, no, this is CNN, no, it was Joe Biden, to point all these fingers and to continue to rip at the shreds of what's left of our democracy is troubling. And it's this kind of pointing the finger at others and saying, they're the problem. I wish we could get back into the middle of the street and talk. And I've been saying this for years. For me, you know, on these picket lines that are happening right now, get out and talk to each other. These are a great place to bring people back together. Adopt a striker. This is a great, you want to help fight the quote unquote war on Christmas? Help fight back against those companies who have put in position these situations where workers are not on the picket line. Help them make it through, make it one day longer. Because you know what it's going to do? It's going to help all of us. This is how the middle class was built. This was how the most prosperous working class in the history of civilization was built. By people standing up, speaking out and saying, no, we demand better. The other thing that happened today that should outrage each and every one of us, Kellogg's announced that they're going to permanently replace their striking workers, even though our law gives you the right to strike. And I was so proud of people today. The millennial generation, the Zoomers, so proud of them today because as Kellogg's was begging for applications for scabs to cross the picket line, they went and jammed their system up and crashed the whole thing. So good for them. That's what community support is all about. I would love to hear your thoughts. Do you buy the War on Christmas stuff? Are you buying this? And this holiday season, are you looking for American-made gifts? Because for me, this is an opportunity to talk about a real war on Christmas. And that is the fact that things aren't made here in the U.S. anymore. And we need to rebuild our manufacturing. And to use the woman's frame, we need to build back better. And build back better in a way that means manufacturing here at home, means jobs for our people, means good, stable, union wage jobs for people so that they can support their families, support themselves, and have a future. Is that too much to ask? Not in the circles that I live in, and not with the union members that I know, and not with even some of the conservatives that I know. This is something that could unite us. This is something that could bring us together in ways that we haven't been together in a very long time. So, that's kind of where we are. Lots to get to today. When we come back from break, I'm going to have Secretary of Labor Marty Walsh here. I'm going to share some thoughts on what's going on with the administration pushing for, first administration in my lifetime saying that, yes, the federal government should be promoting people to join and form unions, which is the intent of the law. Actually getting out on the picket line and walking the line, I was there, saw that. Also, lots to get to about education. Is book burning coming back? I sure hope not. And also, our good friend Sarah Burris is going to be here from Raw Story to share some thoughts on the top stories of the day. And there is a lot. We'll also take your calls a little later in the program and find out what's going on around the country. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. Make sure you follow us on social media at Rick Smith Show on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, all of those stuff. Ways to interact with the program, ways to pick up the content, all of that stuff. Real good stuff. Going to take a quick break right here. When we come back, Secretary of Labor Marty Walsh is going to be here to answer some questions and give us some thoughts on maybe the supply chain too. Are things as bad as we're told? Are we getting our hands around it? Right back after this. Stick around. You listen to The Rick Smith Show. For working people, come to talk. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1958. That was the day 12 ultra-conservatives, including Robert Welch, Fred Koch, and Harry Lynn Bradley, gathered in Indianapolis to found the John Birch Society. These men saw cabals and communist conspiracies everywhere. They mobilized their vast financial resources to fuel Cold War paranoia. They opposed New Deal policies, the Civil Rights Movement, Lyndon Johnson's Great Society programs, and the Equal Rights Amendment. They funded Barry Goldwater's presidential bid in 1964, denounced Richard Nixon as a fake, and warned of his establishment of diplomatic ties with China. The Birchers also opposed water fluoridation, the Environmental Protection Agency, and the Occupational Safety and Health Administration. They pressed for the U.S. to withdraw from the United Nations and viewed the U.S. war in Vietnam as a plot to bring communism to the United States. Welch, a candy manufacturer, even asserted that President Dwight David Eisenhower was simply a tool for the communists and an advocate of a one-world new order. More recently, many Birchers have also helped to found and fund the National Right to Work Committee, whose legal defense arm has pushed hard for anti-union legislation. Prominent members like the Koch brothers have funneled millions into the National Right to Work Committee in order to bust unions, kill the Employee Free Choice Act, and weaken the regulatory authority of the National Labor Relations Board. Their current headquarters are in Appleton, Wisconsin, hometown of Red Scare warrior Senator Joseph McCarthy.
Well, I run down most hurriedly and joined the John Birch Society. Got me a secret membership card, started walking off down the road. Oh boy, I'm a real John Bircher now. Look out, you're
Labor
coming.
History in 2, brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So as I said, the big story for me today was the fact that Starbucks in Buffalo, New York, the workers there voted 19-8 to join and form their union, and that is huge news. One down, 8,952 more to go. You kick open the door and you start marching through. And this is a great thing. But here's my problem. Shouldn't have been this difficult. Shouldn't have had to go over all these hoops. Shouldn't have had to jump all these obstacles. Shouldn't have to put up with all the harassment and intimidation and all of that. And you look at what happened down in Alabama with Amazon. Same thing. We need, in the worst way, comprehensive, major labor law reform. And here to share some thoughts on what's going on in labor here in our country, I've asked Marty Walsh to come talk with us. Marty is the U.S. Secretary of Labor. Marty, thanks for taking time for us.
Thanks for having me on tonight.
So, I'm looking at this Starbucks thing, which is a huge win. And I gotta tell you, my first thought now comes to what happens if they close that store?
I don't think they will. I hope they don't because the workers organized. And I think that, President Biden has said this, and I believe this and said this myself. Workers should have the right to organize. And if they organize, they should be negotiate the contract and be respected. And if a union, if workers decide not to organize in a free and fair election, that's okay too. Because I think the burden's on the union to do it, but the obstacle shouldn't be there. So I don't think they'll close. I'd be disappointed if they close. Starbucks is a company that a lot of people use, a lot of union members use, and I think it would be a sign of bad faith.
Yeah, but we've seen other places do this. The Walmarts of the world have gotten away with this stuff. So in my mind, that's what pops up. But you look at this 19-8 vote, and I guess I was expecting a little larger margin, having seen all of the things that were played out in public, but a good outcome nonetheless.
No, true. And if you look at the number, 19-8, the polling shows it was a little higher. 70% of American people, particularly younger people, like the idea of joining a union. That's the first time in decades that we have those types of numbers. And again, I think, as a union person, you are as well. I think that unions, we have to do the union, I'm not in the unions anymore. I'm in the union, but I'm not part of the union labor movement that way. But I think we have to do a better job of explaining who we are, what we're all about, not just to companies, but also to workers across America. And I think that there's a narrative there. But I think this is a big step for organized labor in this country. And I think that a lot of eyes now are going to focus on Alabama to see what happens down there.
Yeah, no, for me, the frame of union job, better life is the frame. I, as a kid growing up in a housing project on the west side of Cleveland, when you saw someone in the neighborhood get a union job, immediately their lives got better. They had food at the end of the month. The kids had secondhand bikes, and eventually they moved out. So that frame of union job, better life is something that should be talked about and displayed more often, I think.
No, you're right. And also not just that, but if you look at the pandemic and you look at the conversations about worker shortages or lack of good jobs and all these open jobs, that's true. We have a lot of open jobs in the country. But if you look at union jobs, people went back to work. They went back to work because they had protections there. They had good benefits, good salaries, and maybe not the highest salary, but they had comfort. And I think that says a lot about the American worker and the organized labor. And so we'll see what happens. But I definitely think that you talked about labor reform law. There's no question about that. The PRO Act that President Biden filed in January is a step in the right direction there. Obviously, we have to get 60 votes in the Senate to do it. But in the Build Back Better provision, there is some of the PRO Act in that would create penalties for anti-union rhetoric on work sites. So I think hopefully that stays in there when it goes to the final passage in the Senate. And then we just got to continue to move forward. We also have the worker empowerment task force that the president appointed myself. I'm the vice chair. The vice president is the chair of it. We're going to be releasing a report pretty soon on that. So there's a lot of good things happening in this country.
No, I'm with you, and I'll be honest. This is the most pro-union administration of my lifetime. I know, Barack Obama talked a good game, but he talked about those comfortable shoes and walking the picket line. And I'll tell you, the only picket line I've walked on where someone from an administration has come forth is you. You were here in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, walking the picket line with the Kellogg workers. I don't remember that from past administrations.
Yeah, going out there was I don't know, I wouldn't call it symbolic, but it's also an opportunity to let the company know that I'm willing to try and intervene when I need to. And I want, when there's strikes, and I've done this a lot as mayor of Boston, as a state representative, as the head of the building trades. I've done a little bit as mayor, as the Secretary of Labor. I'm willing to sit both sides down and get to an agreement. And it doesn't help anyone, picket lines. It doesn't help the workers that are out there fighting for better wages or better conditions. It doesn't help the company on productivity. So anytime that I can offer my support to try and resolve a dispute, I certainly am going to do that. I've been on both sides of the aisle as mayor. We said this offline. As mayor of Boston, I negotiated against unions with contracts. As the head of the building trades, I negotiated for contracts with unions. So I get how it works, and I get the passion that goes into it. And I just think that all sides have to start having more conversations and dialogues.
Conversation and dialogue and negotiation and getting to the table is key to all of this. But now, the Kellogg's folks are now saying, well, the heck with you. You're not going to take our last offer. We're going to fire all of you and replace you. That's not the spirit of the law that I understand the NLRA to be. Are there any consequences if they do fire everybody?
Well, I can't really get into too much of that right now, but certainly we're watching that very closely. The John Deere strike with the UAW, the membership voted that first one down, and they went back to the table right away and they got a deal done. Hopefully the same thing can happen here. I think that threats and innuendos don't work. I do think that you just got to stay at the table. There's a lot of passion out there, and you got to stay at the table.
No, that's the answer. And the answer is we do need comprehensive labor law reform. And I brought this up earlier. What happened in Alabama, what we saw happen here with the Starbucks organizing, this is way too many obstacles, way too difficult for workers to be able to just exercise what is their right in this country, and that is to freely join and form unions and to collectively bargain for better wages, hours, and conditions. So we desperately need some reforms.
No, there's no question about it, and hopefully we can. We'd like to see that PRO Act get passed and level the playing field here for folks that want to join a union. I mean, that needs to be. Right now, it's not a level playing field.
You're listening to the Rick Smith Show here with Marty Walsh. He's the Secretary of Labor here in the U.S. Somebody who I'm very happy is in that position. I'll tell you, Marty, I was happy when you were there, a union guy in that position. We haven't seen that in a while. So somebody who has fought the fights, has walked the picket lines, it's good to have someone in that position. I'm now looking at all the attacks that are going on against the administration on the supply chains. And we've got some problems supply chain wise. And I think you guys have done the best you can do given the circumstances of alleviating some of those problems. You want to walk me through some of the stuff you've been up to?
Yeah, I went out. I've been visiting ports around the country. I was in Philadelphia. I visited the port in Philly. I was down in South Carolina. I visited the port in South Carolina. But the biggest port that has the biggest issues is Los Angeles and Long Beach. And I was out there last week, and I spent some time with the company. One of the companies. I spent some time with truck drivers, with the Teamsters, with the ILWU, that's the Longshoremen Union out in that part of the country. Lots of conversations about it. One thing just for this time of year. The president has been promised by the big box stores that we will have enough product. There's enough products on the shelves in the warehouses to get through Christmas. So I think that's first and foremost something that we got to just put right in the table right off the bat. The supply chain issue is complicated. It's truckers, it's trucking, it's warehousing, it's space, but we can't lose sight of a pandemic. And a lot of places where these products are made around the world, they shut their factories down because of the COVID-19. So, we can't all of a sudden just erase the fact that with a year and a half ago, we have had a major pandemic where most of the world's economies were shut down, meaning they weren't producing. People were afraid, and governments literally kept people at home, and that has ramifications, and that's what we're feeling now. And I think that as the new year comes into play, there's been a lot of emphasis. The White House has focused very, very closely on this. I've been involved. We do have to work on trucking. I mean, that seems to be one of the biggest obstacles we have. We have lots of different challenges. We have independent contractors. We have companies out there. We have workers that are misclassified. We have all kinds of different pieces out there. So we do have to get a better. No, I don't use the word supply chain. A better process for truckers, and we're working on that now at the Department of Labor. We're going to be rolling some things out in the next couple of weeks about that to see how we can combat that. When I met with the companies out there, one company employed 100 drivers, another company employed 150 drivers, and we got to see, do they have the ability to build up capacity in their companies? And the way the system works in LA, and it works, I guess, but the shipping companies run the docks, the truck companies do the trucking, the dispatching companies do the dispatching. So there are three different types of companies out there, and we just need to make sure they continue to talk to each other.
Yeah, and for me, as somebody who's been a truck driver for over 30 years and has spent a lot of time in this industry, I look at what's going on at that port with the misclassification and the abuse of those truck drivers, and I'm surprised anybody works there at all, given some of the conditions and the things that have gone on down there. That's my take on it. So when you look at this moment, I'm not surprised that they're having a hard time finding people.
No, and quite honestly, I think we've had a trucking shortage in this country for a little bit. It's not just simply right now, but I think the pandemic has certainly shined a big spotlight on it. And same with bus drivers. We have issues in school districts all across the country of shortage of bus drivers, and we're looking at how do we ease that gap too. I mean, ease that burden as well. So there's been some big issues here. But what it comes down to is respecting the worker. So if you're paying somebody a decent wage, a good wage, not a decent wage, a good wage, and you're respecting them as an employee, we will get people going into that industry. If people aren't going in that industry, they're not going in that industry for a reason.
Yep.
And probably one of the biggest reasons is the fact that they're not earning even just a living wage. So that's causing problems, and they have expenses. They own, a lot of these independent drivers own their own truck. They have to fix their own truck. They have to put the gas in their own truck. They have to change the tires in their own truck. They have to do all the maintenance in their own truck. And if they're not earning a wage that they can help raise their family, put food on the table, and fix their truck, then you know what? Why would they drive?
No, I'm right there with you. And a lot of them, they get into these lease agreements that end up, pigeonholing them into poverty wages. And it's something that does have to be addressed. If there is a shortage, and I'm going to dispute a little bit of it, if there really is a shortage, I learned in economics classes 100 years ago, if there's a shortage of something, the price of it should go up. So if you want to attract people, you make the conditions better, you make the wages better. That's how you bring people into it. For me, it's that simple. But I did want to ask your thoughts on the inflation and where the economy is right now, because I saw some statistics that caught my attention, like GDP's up well over 7%. After inflation, wage growth up 3%. Unemployment claims down to a 52-year low. It seems like things are going in a good direction. So why do we keep hearing the sky is falling from my friends on the right?
Well, I think a lot of it is rhetoric and just to get people concerned. There's no question that we are dealing with inflation. The president laid out a plan to take on inflation. This week, we haven't heard the news of gas and oil prices going down that much, not as much when they go up, but gas and oil prices both went down. I think that's important for this time of year, particularly winter coming, lots of people in all over this country. And I think that the president, I think wages going up, some people said it's a bad thing. I think it's a good thing, seeing people have more money in their pocket. American people have more savings in their pocket. But when I say that, I'm not sure lower wage workers, how much savings they actually have. The one stat that keeps getting brought to my attention is that low wage workers' wages are going up, and they're going up higher than inflation. So that's a good thing. But I think, again, we're living in a time that is unprecedented. I mean, we can't lose sight of that. I think that, I'm not saying you're not saying that, but when I talk to people, it's like all of a sudden we kind of are forgetting the fact that we're living with a pandemic. When a year and a half ago, I was mayor of Boston. On March 17th, St. Patrick's Day, I had to shut down schools. Businesses were closed, restaurants were closed, sporting entertainments were canceled. Everything stopped because of a pandemic. And I don't think we ever realized in America that would happen. We had people that were dying. We had to build excess capacity for our hospitals. We had people on ventilators around this country. And when that happened, it changed a lot of things. And so I think as we continue to move forward here, we'll get better. But I still think there's still a lot of fear and uncertainty. I just don't like the fact when people play on people's fears during a pandemic. We're still living in the pandemic, and yep. People that are vaccinated that aren't going back to work, they're afraid of getting the virus because their coworkers aren't vaccinated. People that don't want to get vaccinated, okay, if you don't want to get vaccinated, that's your decision, but wear a mask, get tested, do the things that are important, just so people know that they're safe going to the work site. Because you don't know what's in somebody's home. I didn't give my mother a hug for one whole year. And my mother's older woman, and like literally, she was in the house. I was on the porch. I'd bring her some stuff and drop it off there and knock on the door and see her. But that has an impact on so many people. And then we lost 777,000 lives today with COVID-19 in the United States of America, and over 5.1 or 5.2 million people around the globe. That's a lot of people that we lost because of the pandemic.
Yeah, and that idea of common decency, being caring about others. You don't care about yourself, at least care about some of the other folks. Last question I've got for you, in looking at the bipartisan infrastructure bill, you as a building trades guy got to be thrilled with this going through. And one of the things that I'm happy with is prevailing wage is in that law, and I know the Republicans tried to gut it, but it's there.
Yeah, no, and what the prevailing wage will do is make sure people get paid a decent wage when they work on these projects around the country. As a building trade guy, it's a great bill. I think it's going to do a lot, not just for workers, but it's going to do a lot for communities in our country, building new bridges, building new roadways, trains, public transportation, waterways, clean drinking water, no more lead pipes, broadband, electric charging stations. That's all great stuff. And then also in the Build Back Better bill that's being debated right now, being discussed right now in the Senate. That's another important bill, but where you have child care and adult care and families that pay for child care today will pay no more than 7% of their salary if they earn $300,000 or less. And then there's money in there for workforce development, job training, and apprenticeships, and not just building trades apprenticeships, other apprenticeships. And if we truly want to move America forward, and this is what the president talks about, he wants to win the future. Win the future means manufacturing, means technology, means staying as a global leader in production. We need to continue to give opportunities for people so they can get trained in these different fields and they can better their life. You had an opportunity with the Teamsters. I had an opportunity with the laborers. We need to get more people to have the opportunities with that.
No, absolutely. No question about it. And I think one of the things I hope that we've learned out of this pandemic, especially when you're talking about supply chain, is we need to reshore manufacturing. We need to start building stuff here again. We wouldn't have the supply chain problems we have if we were manufacturing things in this country again. At least that's my thought.
That's true. And I was out in Ohio, Toledo, Ohio, and I was at the groundbreaking of a solar panel factory, First Solar, and they're going to be building solar panels, United States, made in America solar panels. And they already have a factory there. They're going to add another, I think they said 5,000 jobs. That's a big deal. I mean, we just need to continue that. And this is an area that years ago had lots of manufacturing, and people live in communities that had manufacturing. We have the buildings, we have the warehouses. Now we need the investments to bring these manufacturing jobs back to the United States of America.
Absolutely. Marty, I appreciate you taking some time for us. Keep up the great work. Keep getting out on those picket lines and supporting workers. I appreciate your time. Hope you'll come back again soon.
I will. Thank you.
Good stuff. Secretary of Labor, Marty Walsh. I'd love to hear your thoughts. You got question, comment, something that Marty talked about? You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. We'll take a quick break right back after this. Stick around and listen to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So, interestingly enough, our friends in Texas still moving to ban books. And I'm telling you, any day now, I'm waiting for it. I'm waiting for a giant pile somewhere of those evil books with thoughts in them to go up in flames. And they'll blame it on somebody who, this is why we're doing this because of the Christmas tree. I'm just waiting for crazy stuff. But here we are. Welcome to 21st century America. I'm here to share some thoughts on the possibility of book burnings. I've asked our good friend Sari Beth Rosenberg to come talk with us. Sari Beth is a senior advisor on education to voters of tomorrow. She's also an educator in New York City, I believe. Sari Beth, thanks for taking time for us.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be back on the show.
So the book burnings are coming. At least I think they are. Some of these stories that I've been seeing are crazy. But do you see book burnings like I do?
Oh, yeah, all the time. I think that tree burning you were talking about he mistook it for a giant buck. Just kidding. Ridiculous joke.
No, I did ask if they did it, if it was was this a false flag? Did they do it simply so they could compare the tree burning to Pearl Harbor like they did?
Like, where were you when the Fox News made in China possibly tree caught fire, right? It's like, I was not paying attention until you made me. But anyway, Not you, them. But yeah, book burning. The group called Moms for Liberty is looking, putting out bounties, I hear, in New Hampshire to get word of any teachers who might be teaching about, Dr. Martin Luther King, who the right ironically loves to quote like out of context, but then I've seen some headlines where some middle grade books on Dr. King have been banned or threatened to be banned. So that's where we're at.
Because they read the next sentence.
Yeah, right. They right.
It wasn't on what they read wasn't on Facebook.
It wasn't on Facebook. It wasn't put on a pic. It wasn't some like fake quote meme that they saw, and they were like, "Wait, actually, we don't want our kids reading him." I mean, that's basically what's happening here. It's terrifying. I mean, I used to not say I'm lucky I live in New York City, right? There's all these associations with living in New York City, but I will say that I haven't had one problem with a kid or a teacher or school staff member not wearing a mask. And I have not been yelled at for teaching about racism. Wow! So I'm winning in the education system in America right now.
You are winning. My wife just got back from our school board meeting, and the anti-mask crowd was out in full force, whining, complaining about breathing their own breath, and give them a Tic Tac or something.
Yeah, but put some gum in there. I hear Freedent's good for that. Maybe, I don't know, some Trident.
But here's the thing, and this is where we're in this weird spot, because with all of this pressure, all of this stuff, you've got all of this organized money creating these crises or these fires, possibly for books in the future. It's creating tension for the students. It's creating tensions for the teachers. And I was just looking at some statistics about the suicide rate among students right now is through the freaking roof. And yet, we're going to just make it worse by parents screaming and carrying on like idiots.
Yeah, about masks and teaching about racism. And I can say, I can only speak anecdotally because I only teach 5 classes, but I don't teach all of America's kids, but from the kids that I know and teach in high school, I've been teaching for 20 years, as you know, and I have not experienced this level of mental health issues. Like, the good thing about this generation is they don't have a stigma around it, which is amazing. And they have the language and terminology to identify the emotions they're going through. That doesn't make it any better that they're going through it. And if things weren't great for them before the pandemic, being a teenager is tough in this world. But I will say that the ripple effect, you see it. I mean, they're craving community, they're craving a calmness, and unfortunately, the adults around them are actually doing the opposite. They're creating trauma. They're creating extra trauma on top of pre-existing trauma, right? When at the end of the day, want to know what kids are? I was saying this morning to somebody. I haven't heard one kid in America say that they're scared to go to school because they might be taught about institutionalized racism. Want to know what they're actually expressing their fear over? Possibly getting COVID in the classroom, and the bigger fear they have is getting shot.
Yeah,
right?
hello.
I mean, hello. Like, and it's just, again, the marketing campaign around quote unquote CRT. It has been incredible. And I was hoping it would just kind of fizzle out, but nope, they're going strong. I mean, there was that Reuters thread on Twitter the other day, just school after school, district after district, that's doubling down. And Texas just revised their quote unquote CRT law to make it even stricter about what one can teach. And at the end of the day, I mean, what are these teachers going to do? I mean,
I think they're going to leave. I mean, ultimately, I think you're going to get teachers who are leaving, and I understand there's an exodus going on as we speak. Because who wants to be involved in this stuff? When my daughter, a couple of years ago said she wanted to be a teacher, I cringed. If she came back to me now and said that, I want to be a teacher now, I probably would lock her up at this point, because or seek mental treatment, because I don't know why you'd go into this profession. And I know you've just recently written an article over at Parents Magazine about the mental health of teachers, because you guys deal with all of our societal problems. You're like at the bottom of the hill where everything rolling down you get caught with.
Yeah, and then when there are other, I mean, our number one job, I think everyone forgot, is to educate kids, teach them content, teach them critical thinking, and everything that goes along with what you do in a classroom. But yeah, we have had to become counselors, therapists. We've had to become experts in pandemics and disease spread mitigation. We've had to become experts in what to do if there's a school shooter, how to conduct a safe active shooter drill. I mean, these things I certainly didn't sign up for 20 years ago. I love my job still, and I'm not saying that just because my students might be watching or watch this later. I love it. I mean, today we had our feminist club, and we made bracelets, and it was just kind of really nice community gathering. But when I speak to other teachers, I don't think we're really processing how much of their trauma that we are absorbing, because I feel myself wanting to make up for all the time that they missed over the past almost 2 years. But it takes a toll on my mental health and all the other teachers. So the article I wrote for parents is about how, mental health across the board in America is people's mental health is suffering. And you see a lot of headlines, obviously, about young people, but teachers, because teachers are people too. I like to remind my students that I'm also a person. I'm not just a grading machine. And we also, teachers are also suffering. And I will say that that article just got published this afternoon. And I've had so many teachers that I know and don't know reach out to me thanking me, because they do feel like it's getting ignored. And I had a joke, but it's not really a joke. My dad, who's a psychiatrist, was saying to me that, we were talking about how they should probably have a guy. We have a lot of funding with Build Back Better and all the different resources going to schools. I think every school should have a not mandatory therapist, but a guidance counselor for teachers, because teachers are suffering too.
Yeah.
And in order for us to help the young people, we also need to be on top of our mental health and trauma that we're experiencing on the day to day.
It's easy to forget about the teachers. It's easy to forget about their needs as well. And look, I say this all the time, like policemen, it's the same thing. They're stuck picking up all of society's problems because policy-wise, we haven't done the right things to help people get mental health treatment, to help with poverty, to help with a lot of the societal problems that when things roll downhill, it's the guy standing or the woman standing at the bottom of the hill that gets run over.
It's so true. And I mean, I think in the summer, I forget which episode we were on speaking about this, but we were saying how, we don't want to return to normal because normal wasn't working. And here we are. And I thought we were kind of at a crossroads in the fall when everyone was going back to school. And I'm getting really nervous now that everyone just kind of wants to return to normal without recognizing the fact that normal wasn't working. Teachers across the board do not get paid enough. Class sizes are too large, especially now when kids need even more individualized attention. And also because of, it's still a global pandemic, right? And I'm just listing like 3 of like 100 things that need to improve to make teachers feel safe, feel protected, and make them want to stay in their jobs, and maybe allow you to, if your daughter does want to be a teacher, to make you feel like, oh, cool, and not want to lock her up instead. Yeah. I know that's a joke.
No, but at the end of it, we're still talking about those evil books with words in them and thoughts. Might give them kids some thoughts. We can't have that. We don't want them to think.
Yeah, one of my, what's funny is that because I never even heard of CRT really. I mean, maybe in passing because I went to college, but never did I think about it in the past 20 years as a teacher, and certainly never has a student asked me about it. I mean, we talk about institutionalized racism for sure. And, day one, kids are like, Miss, what's CRT? And like, why can't kids learn about it? So the right kind of like played themselves because kids are asking about it now. They never even asked about it. But the thing is that that's not what they don't want us to teach. Let's just call it out. I like to do it anytime I can talk about it. They don't want kids learning about racism, institutionalized racism, and discrimination. They're calling it CRT because it's, as one of my students also astutely said, it sounds scary. Critical sounds scary. Race, well, that's scary to white people, he said. And then theory sounds like really complex and scary. So that's why they're using that term. And I actually, honestly, I think he's explained it better than any pundit I've heard.
Yeah, no, it's a theory that's critical, and I don't know. It's something to do with race, so it's all bad.
Something to do with race, something to do with maybe something about that I did bad at some point. I don't know.
And this is where the weird thing is. I go, look, I didn't do anything. You go back, 100, 200, 300 years, it's them. Let them have responsibility for it. Let's learn from their lessons and let's not do it again. How hard is that? That is not difficult.
No, and it's like, the whole idea that like kids can't handle complexity and discomfort when meanwhile we're making them do active shooter drills. That's far more uncomfortable than learning about something that kids already know. And also it's so ridiculous because studies show that by kindergarten, BIPOC kids already experience racism. So I don't think it's too young to teach white kids about racism too, right? So it's just such a white privilege thing that's happening, and it's not for the kids. And I haven't heard one kid yet. Have you heard one kid in the news complain? I mean, there was that story about the kid getting triggered by Toni Morrison, according to his mother, right? But I never heard the kid complain about it. So I've yet to hear one young person complain about what they're learning in school. I hear usually what happens is they get to the university level and they say, if they haven't learned about these uncomfortable truths about America, they're angry at their high school and middle school teachers for not teaching it to them and making them feel kind of ignorant when they get to college. That's the only complaints I've heard, to be honest, Rick.
Yeah, no, we most certainly get all upset about nothing. And look, I want my kids to learn actual history. That's one of those things. And then look, over the years, we've taken our kids across the country to learn actual history. In 2015, we did a civil rights tour that took us into some places that were really, hard to explain, why this stuff happened and how it happened. But it's the history of our country, and I think it's something that we have to deal with. So going forward, I mean, I think we all want to do what's best for our teachers. I think we all want what's best for our kids. Do you have any hope that we get back to somewhere? And I know you use the word normal, but somewhere functional.
Functional, yeah, that's our bar now. I was gonna joke and say nope, there's no hope left. I'm a teacher. I always have hope. You leave us the school every day, and you wake up again hoping that you educate one more kid or get one more kid turned on to learning about history. I do have hope because I do ultimately believe that the most people are generally good. I do believe that. I think that some people, because of a lack of education and because of fear, they can easily be manipulated by some really, really cynical, sinister forces in this country. But I do think that, one-on-one conversations, not letting these people, what were you calling it, outrage candy, like not getting caught up at, not like binging on the outrage candy and then binging out your own, or I don't know, regurgitating hitting your own binge candy. I do have hope because I think people generally do want to get along and have a functional society. I don't think anyone's enjoying this dysfunction. So I think that if we can start from that place and work outwards, yes. But I do think that to keep teachers, to deal with teacher retention rates, we need to deal with some basic bread and butter things like pay teachers more, make sure that every teacher has union protection, because it blows my mind that some teachers in this country aren't allowed to be in a union. And also we need to figure out ways to really improve the infrastructure of schools so that we can have less kids in a class, because if kids are dealing with mental health issues and have quote unquote gaps in their learning, throwing 34 kids in a classroom isn't going to help. And there's ways. We have money in this country to do that. Let's do it. Let's finally do it. And let's stop messing around talking about CRT and let's also find ways to protect our schools and gun control and gun violence prevention is a whole other topic. But we really need to make some changes, because if we keep up at this rate, we're just going to see headline after headline about mental health issues in kids, mental health issues in parents, and we need to fix this right now.
Yeah, no, and maybe you catch some of those kids who are on the verge of becoming the next shooter. If you've got more attentive teachers and you're not having to deal with so much going on, and maybe you get those kids the help that they need before they go off. The weird thing is you brought up the practicing these these drills. And I remember as a kid, we were always worried that, the next nuclear bomb was going to go off, and we were hiding under our desks because evidently the Catholic school desks that were in our school, those somehow were like nuclear fallout bunkers. We could go under there and the desk would protect us. And I remember how silly that was because never thought it was going to happen and really never thought the desk would protect us. But I can't imagine being a kid today knowing that it is a real possibility because you see it happen so frequently that you're going, is this desk really going to protect me if someone walks through that door with a gun and starts shooting the place up?
Yeah, quick anecdote. We did an active shooter drill in October, and my students and I were huddled in a corner, where the shooter might not be able to see us. And we were in whispered tones, we were discussing that we'd probably just jump out the window because it's only 2 flights. And at the very worst, we'd probably break our legs, and better than getting shot. And this wasn't just joking around and being kind of silly. It was literally like they were scared and we were coming up with a plan. That's the real fear, not teaching about racism or learning about it.
There you go. Sari Beth, I appreciate you taking the time. Great stuff.
Yeah, thank you so much. So good to speak with you.
Thanks so much. Our good friend Sari Beth Rosenberg, Senior Advisor, Education Advisor for Voters of Tomorrow. Really good stuff. Let's take a quick break right here. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people.